Hey everybody, this is Alan. Today I'm going to cover a concept on how to think like a Unity game developer. The first thing to understand is that Unity works in a certain way. It works with components and scripts, and this is important because you want to work with Unity and not against it. So you need to learn to think like Unity. How does this work? Well, there's a framework that I've used. The three things you need to remember is that what does X need, what does X react to, and what does X need to do? These are your variables, events slash inputs, and methods. This is a beginner mistake sometimes I've seen where you ask, how do I make X? But the better question is, what does X need? In this slide, it helps break down that concept of how to think like a Unity game developer. And here are three questions that I ask myself before I write any single line of code. First, what does it need to know? So, like I said, these are your variables. Examples are going to be your speed, health, and is it grounded, like a bull? The second question is, what does it need to react to? These are going to be events and inputs. For example, on collision enter, on death, on key down. The third the third step is methods. What does it need to do after its reaction? This could be, well, you need to move if you press the lower right arrow, jump if you press spacebar, or take damage on collision enter. If you start to look at each question and each object you're trying to build in this framework, you'll see that you'll have success and you'll be able to build things a little easier. So, to help show this idea in a real world example, I went to the asset store and I grabbed a free shooter pack. This is the low poly shooter template. Like I said, it's free. I'll put the link in the description so you can play around with it. But this is an excellent learning example, first and foremost, if you want to build an FPS shooter. But this example also really showcases the idea of what needs to know what, your variables, what does it need to react to, and then what do you do once the reaction takes place? So this corner here, let's build a trigger zone. Let's build a danger zone so that if the player enters this area near that target, we'll go ahead and print something to the console. So this is going to showcase what we need to know, what we need to react to, and what we need to do after that reaction. So I'm going to create an empty game object here called danger zone. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a box collider to it so that we can detect when the player enters this. So I'm just going to resize it something big enough that we can then jump into or bump into in the game. And once I get this into position, we're going to need to create it as a trigger so the player can collide through it. And then let's go ahead and build our script. This script is going to be something that we will put on that game object. Let's call it enter the danger zone. And let's go and open this up. We'll put it on our game object first. Let that domain reload. And now that that's on the game object, we're beginning to enter that we can say, hey, I need to say, let's start with what do we need to know, right? So what are we looking for? Well, we're going to understand that we need to figure out our main player. Do we have contact with the main player? So this is our first step. What do we need to know? Well, we need to know our player. Who is that? The second thing that we need to know is what are we going to react to, this game object. This game object will react to on trigger enter. And then, well, what do we do? Well, let's look. Do we collide with our main player? So does this collider touch the main player? And if so, let's do that something, which in this instance, let's just go ahead and print out that the player has entered the danger zone. So once the player collides with this, let's go ahead and see, okay, let's drag our player object here. This is the what do we need to know? This is our variable. We put that on there, make sure it's a trigger, and let's go ahead and hit play. So this is going to showcase the simple framework that what do we need to know, our player? What do we need to react to, our player's collision? And what do we do then? So let's go ahead and get rid of some of these cool targets and let's run over and let's go ahead and see if we can actually enter that danger zone. Switch to the console and let's see if we can actually test this framework. Super simple concept, but let's go ahead and make this and we'll go in right now. Let's go. Okay, let's jump. And look at that. The player has entered the danger zone. So you can see how when we thought like a Unity game developer, the main key behind that is there are components that build up most objects inside Unity. And the reason that is important is that Unity likes to work around the idea of objects and components coming together as one. And that is why if you can think like a Unity game developer in the aspect of knowing what do you need to know? So what does your object need to know? This was our main player. What does it need to react to? In this case, it was an on trigger event. And then after that, what do you do? Well, you perform the action. You can print to the screen. You can take damage. And if you take this idea and scale it to any game idea that you have that you want to build with Unity, I guarantee that you'll have an easier time fleshing out large ideas overall. I hope this was helpful, guys, and if it was, please leave a like and consider subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Thanks so much. See you next time.